License to Kill is proudly sponsored by Pest Patrol and Polaris Pest Group. Pest Patrol has been a long-standing supporter of the LTK community. Their continued commitment helps strengthen our mission, and we appreciate their support to keep our agents the best in the field. Polaris Pest Group is your ethical partner in growth. Looking to sell your business? Polaris is a values-driven private equity group dedicated to honoring your legacy and building upon your company's long-term aspirations. This episode is also supported by Swarm Pest Control Marketing. Swarm Pest Control Marketing is a digital marketing partner, and Swarm Mastermind helps leaders scale with confidence.
Hi, I'm Marcus, and welcome to the License to Kill podcast, where pest control professionals meet cutting-edge expertise, industry insights, and a whole lot of camaraderie. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting your journey as a PMP, this podcast dives into everything that makes our industry tick. From advanced techniques and groundbreaking products to hilarious field stories and the real talk about the challenges we face in our industry. Join us as we explore the science, art, and community behind pest control, celebrating the people who work tirelessly to keep our world safe, healthy, and pest-free. As always, stay sharp, stay connected, stay legendary. Let's start the show.
Alrighty, folks. Well, thank you so much for joining us for the License to Kill show. Today we have Jeff Stafford joining us. He is a expert over there on the West Coast. He does a bunch of bird work, bed bug work, does a lot of work with canines. And today we're going to be talking a lot about some of the specialty work that he did in bird work and some of these large projects he got a chance to get involved in and what that side of the industry looks like. You see a lot of companies that struggle with getting a bird program and don't have anything robust. And I think Jeff is going to offer us a ton of insight today on what that's going to look like. So Jeff, go ahead, give us a bit of background here. Tell me a little about who you are, how you got started in the industry, and what brought you to moving into bird work.
I started in the industry in 1985, doing regular, general pest work, residential, commercial, a little bit of everything. A little bit of bird work. Back in the 80s, bird work consisted of, Avitrol and, maybe some hot foot gel here and there. There wasn't a whole lot of really anybody doing anything. And I did that until 1994 when I opened up my own company. And when I opened the company, I really wanted to do something different. And I'd been hearing a lot more about what was going on with bird work. It was really the infancy in the U.S. What we were doing in the early 90s, they'd been doing over in Europe for probably a good 10, 15, maybe even 20 years. And we were starting to figure it out over here. So when I opened up the company, I opened up immediately with a division that specialized in birds. There was really hardly anybody out there doing it at the time, and the market was wide open. So we went out there and just started marketing and selling jobs, and the first really large job I got was a racetrack in Orange County that was being remodeled, and it was a big net job, and it was it was about a $35,000 job, which to me at that time was absolutely huge. And and back then we had only hand hog ringers, and I did most of that job.
What's
90%
that?
of
What's a hand hog ringer? What's that?
A hand hog ringer, basically, the way you install net is first you put up a cable frame.
Okay.
And then to attach the net to the cable, you use a hand ring tool. We now have pneumatics that are really easy, but back then they call it a P7 plier. Basically, it was a plier that you'd squeeze down, and it takes a staple and turns it into a circle to attach the net to the cable.
Okay.
And 30,000 square feet, I probably put about $250,000 of those in to get that net up. So it was a lot of wear and tear on the hands. I've still got carpal tunnel to this day doing that.
So how do you tension the cables in order to how does that tensioning process work?
The cables basically, you have anchors that you typically will either screw in or shoot into the metal or the wood. We use a lot of powder actuated tools if we're going into metal, or screws if you're going into wood, etc. And basically, you create a cable frame that's going to run the whole perimeter of the net, and then depending on the size, you've got cross cables that you put in for support, and then you basically just start attaching the netting.
Okay.
It's all about, just like anything else. Knowing the species of the birds you're working with, knowing what the tolerances are for gaps and openings, and making sure that you get that sealed. A good example would be that job there was for sparrows.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I was gonna say, what are the two big bird sizes? We're dealing with like pigeons and sparrows, and mostly.
with netting, it's mostly pigeons and sparrows.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but with sparrows, your tolerance level there is about 3/4 of an inch.
Okay.
And even though they are the small bird that you would think would be, not that difficult, they are one of the most persistent birds you can deal with if you're netting them out of an area they're nesting.
Okay.
And that job is an example I always use. They only netted half the grandstands, and we had a corrugated roof that went over the I-beams.
Okay.
So to fill that space, we filled that corrugated beam, and that beam was about 18 inches wide with expanding foam. So that way, that gap above the net was sealed. And about 2 weeks after the net job was complete, I got a call, and they said it was snowing in the grandstands. And I ran out,
Oh.
and the birds were pecking away at the expanding foam so voraciously it looked like it was literally snowing in the grandstands.
Oh no.
So, we figured out a solution, got that fixed, but then we watched the birds. They would actually fly up to the net, which was, 80 feet off the ground,
Hmm.
and they would flip upside down and grab the net with their feet and walk it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it took them about another 2 weeks before they found a gap that was a little bit bigger than 3/4 of an
Okay, so they're
inch.
just investigating. They're just finding every
Oh, yeah.
nook and cranny. Oh my goodness.
Yep. So, it was one of those, for one of my first big jobs, but a job with lessons well learned that we carry to this day. That, when you're dealing with sparrows, you make sure you don't leave any gaps anywhere. I've watched guys where, when you're hog ringing, you typically will hog ring, every square, or every second square, to make sure that net is tight. But I've seen guys that have skipped some squares, and sparrows will actually grab that net and pull it away from the cable and squeeze in.
Yeah, just the littlest. Wow, that's
Yep.
so. Yeah, literally, like you said, So okay, that's interesting because I saw a product at Pest World earlier this year. They are these like rails that you glue or affix to the wall, and then the net just like hooks onto it. But it's actually got a pretty unique mechanism that when it hooks, it's locked. And because it's on a like rigid railing, it's not. It doesn't have to deal with the flex and tension and like bowing of the cable. And so it was kind of interesting, and it didn't have near as many, like you said, the hog rings, the individual, like
Right.
all these components. It was lesser components, like as opposed to a bunch of individual small pieces. It was kind of just like one. Have you seen anything like that? Have you ever heard of anything like that being used?
No, I actually, I haven't seen it, but I could see the application in a smaller net.
Yeah.
A larger net would be pretty difficult. There's a lot of pressure when you start putting up 50 by 100 foot nets.
Mm-hmm.
You're dealing with a lot of pressure, because when you put those nets up, you want to put them flat and taut.
Yep.
You don't want them drooping. So, but I could definitely see something like you're describing for smaller net jobs. But larger net jobs, I would really have to see what the tool is. It sounds like something I'd like to investigate, and I'd be curious to find out who makes it, because none of the suppliers I work with. So I'm assuming this is probably something new from overseas.
Yeah, it was German. It was they started with these like spikes that go on the side of solar panels, and
Okay.
so they like form fit. So they're like these spikes inside of tubes, and so no matter what the terrain is, the tubes, the spikes kind of take the, kind of like a key in a slot, if that makes sense.
No,
Yeah,
no, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking
yeah.
about. We've got a very similar product that we work with
Oh,
for
that's cool.
solar panel exclusion.
So talking about big jobs, tell me about what's one of these mega jobs that you've done for a bird. I think I heard you say 1,000,000 square feet. What was this place?
The largest job we did was for SeaTac Airport. It was 1.2 million square feet. It
Holy
was
cow!
several ponds. They wanted to keep the birds, obviously, these ponds were along the runways, so the
Okay,
goal basically was to mediate bird airstrikes
right.
by
Okay.
keeping them out of the ponds. And
Hmm.
I think the biggest one we did was probably, I want to say, 3 or 4 acres, one whole
Each pond.
pond,
How
and
many ponds total?
it was 7 ponds.
Seven
It was,
ponds total. Yeah.
it
Wow.
was and what we did there, that job normally would have taken, several months to do, but
Yeah.
we took a look at it, and I had custom nets made overseas because typically your
Okay.
nets will come, and the biggest is usually like a 200 by 200, but I had nets that were literally, over an acre each.
Right.
And
Right.
once we got basically all of our cable grid system up over the ponds, and to give you an idea, we were in 80-foot lifts in the ponds. They were dry. They basically had drained them for us, and
Holy.
working from 80-foot lifts to reach where the net would be.
So
So,
do you like drill anchors and like, or not anchor, like poles or something into the banks on each
oh,
side? I mean, how are you suspending all of this?
they had posts that were pre-installed for us.
Okay.
Uh, that were, I believe they were probably about 8 feet deep in
Oh
concrete.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, we had
Dang, huge.
uh, we had turnbuckles that were about, I want to say, almost 4 feet long, basically to get the cable to, straight, taut across these ponds. I mean, it was a
How do you even calculate all the like tension pressures and like how much force you need to like torque it to in order for it to be, or is it just eyeball? I mean, is it really just
well,
skill and talent?
yeah. We've had a couple of jobs where we've had to measure tension, and there's a special tool for that.
Okay.
But most of the time, it's just a matter of just getting that cable taut and getting it straight, and then working within it that way.
Wow.
There's only been a couple of times when the engineers threw in there they wanted us to measure the tension, but
Okay.
these ones basically, they had a system to where, it was actually a pretty unique system because the cables were also set up to break away
Okay.
uh, for snow load. So that way, if the snow load became too much, it would
Right.
only take a portion of the net down versus the entire system. So it was a pretty unique
Wow.
system, designed by engineers and architects. We work primarily with construction companies, so our job basically is to take their spec and their design and just put it together.
Holy cow. That's a massive, absolutely. So okay, so that I would say that's like like you said, architects, engineers. That's a very multi complex. So how did you? What does that pathway look like in between, right? So you're day one. I'm interested in getting into pest or to bird control, doing a little Avitrol and gel. How do you become this expert that's working at this kind of level? I mean, you can't just pull someone off the street and do that kind of work. I mean, that's something you need to have some massive
It was
foresight.
years of experience to be able to do jobs at that level. Most pest control companies are not equipped for a job like that, obviously, on multiple levels.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah.
First one,
Lifts.
obviously, is, you can't pull 5, 6, 7 guys off routes and then, dedicate them to a job for 3 months
Right.
without that in your core business. So it really is a specialty within the industry. Most pest control companies can do you can
Right.
go to your shopping center and put some spike up, on the parapet walls, or, an apartment complex, but something major like this, that's where you want a division that specializes in it. there's many layers. The first one being is having the right people that know how to do the work.
Yeah, yeah,
The
definitely.
the other part is on the estimating side. Most of these jobs are prevailing wage.
Right,
Prevailing wage, depending on where you're working, can run you anywhere from $65 an hour to, we have jobs that are upwards of $100 an hour now in New
right,
York.
right.
And if you don't get the labor right, that can be a mistake that can cost you an awful lot.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so then on the back end, these jobs are extremely paperwork heavy. We are dealing with government jobs, we're dealing with
Right.
prevailing wage, we're dealing with certified payroll. You've got to know how to do all the documentation, make sure every I is dotted properly, make sure every T is crossed properly.
Yeah, definitely.
Because if you don't, you're not going to get paid.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to it, and it definitely takes time to learn it. One of the things that we have done, I actually just broke my bird division out of the company, the pest control company,
Okay.
because I came to the realization that I was operating two companies. I was operating a pest control company, and I was operating basically a construction company at this point. Our bird division,
Yeah.
for lack of better words, is a specialized construction company.
Right.
So we actually just broke it out, and I actually brought in another partner to
That
help me
makes more
manage
sense.
it. He was the vice president of sales for BirdX, and I brought him on board and
Oh,
basically, made him a partner within the company. We
yep.
moved the company out of California to Harrison, Tennessee, uh,
What'd you
which
do that
it
for?
didn't matter. I'm sorry.
What'd you do that for? Why move it?
Uh, Well, a couple of reasons. The biggest one is 90% of my work is outside of California.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm paying California taxes.
Yeah, that tends to be a common reason.
So,
Yeah.
so now I'm moving it to Harrison, Tennessee. One, that's where my partner's based out of. Two,
Okay.
it's a much more tax-friendly state for a company. If we were doing all our work in California, it'd be a different story. But the fact that most of our work is outside of California, there's going to
Anyways,
be
yeah.
it's going to be a big benefit to us cost wise on the tax side.
Okay.
Um, so and what we're trying to do right now is we're almost trying to become like the Copason of bird control. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
we're
Helping.
working with
Yeah.
other companies, partnering with other companies,
Right.
and we're going to be really making a big push, putting ourselves out to the pest control industry, basically as a partner to either train them,
Hmm.
come alongside and support them, or if they just want to outright subcontract to us.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
where we're going with it now to help support the industry. It's a niche market. There's a lot of good money to be made in it. But like I said, these bigger projects, those are the complex ones for your average pest control company.
So for your average company that wants to, be a partner and help out with this kind of deal where they're subcontracting it out entirely, how are they pricing that? Are they doing like, I mean, how much of a markup are they trying to charge on that in order to make that work out to make that, you
I've
know?
done a lot of subcontract work over the years. I've done a lot of work with some of the big companies. There were times when I was doing almost all of Orkin's work on the West Coast.
Wow.
Um, and what I've seen is, if they keep their markup somewhere between 30 and 40%,
Yeah,
we can stay competitive.
you still
Once they
competitive
start
still.
pushing above 40%, then that's basically when you'll start seeing the close rate drop quite a bit.
Okay,
But if there's some companies out there that want to take your price and they want to double it,
sure.
and they might get lucky every now and again, but the reality is if they want to be competitive, we can offer a competitive price as a sub and allow them to make a decent profit for essentially not doing anything if they don't want to other than signing a contract. If they keep it between 30 and 40%.
Okay, those are good ranges, and I've heard of a few different people who are using the model of trying to be like a tool in the tool bag for pest control companies. Like you said, some of this stuff is just super niche. Whether it's the canine dogs and inspecting like really large facilities, or whether it's this bird control and kind of this large netting. So, what would be the average size company? And you were talking about some maybe smaller projects that would be like best ideal. I mean, would you really not want to handle some of those super big government contracts where you got to have the full team involved? Would that be some contracted out by a larger you said you worked with Orkin and such, but what is like your ideal company to work with? Kind of just casting a wide net and getting everybody?
Our ideal company is really, anybody that's going to run across a bird job. And as I said,
Yeah, easy.
we'll help them on any level.
Okay.
If they want training, we'll offer training. If they want to learn how to estimate, we'll teach them how to estimate. If they want to learn how to go out there and, do jobs the size we're doing, we will teach them. There's plenty of work out there for all of us. Our goal is to build partnerships to where, even when there's more work than we can handle, that we have people we can turn to that we know are qualified and know will do the job as good as we will,
Yeah.
and say, hey, this job needs to get done in January. We're booked. We'd like to subcontract this to you.
Okay.
So, even on the flip side, we're looking to build those relationships.
So, what does the training process look like if you're, wanting to wanting to grow people's capability and the market's capability of having a workforce that can do that kind of work? What does that training look like? How do you move into do you go fly into a company and spend a couple weeks with their guys, or is it virtual trainings, or how does that all work?
We can virtually train them and work with them on how to estimate and make sure that their bids are solid,
Okay.
as they're going. As far as the training, it would be either their guys coming and working alongside us on projects. There's no better way to learn than to be out there doing it, because then we can teach you hands-on. There's so many small things that you can't teach in the classroom. You have to be on the job site.
Right.
And you've got to experience a multitude of different applications. We do a lot of hangars. There's special things about hangars that you're going to need to know about.
Okay.
We do a lot of work with different MTAs, like New York MTA, LA MTA.
Right. Yep.
You,
Transit
you've got to know
authorities.
how to
Yep.
work in that environment. You're there. You're dealing with flaggers. If you're dealing with a live rail,
Yep.
if you're working along a flight line, you got to understand the rules of pod and stuff like that. I mean, so I said the best experience you're going to get is out in the field. And same time, we're going to be in a position to where, let's say you've got a crew of guys that maybe you've got a really great termite crew, and the guys understand how to work with wood and build stuff. That's the perfect team for us to go out and stick one of our guys with, and we can go get with your team and basically show them, okay, let's get this net put up, or let's install this electrical track.
Right.
These guys already know how to work with hand tools. They know how to do straight lines and put stuff in, and we're just going to teach them how to do it right with this application.
So, okay, that's kind of interesting because you said you did $5 million worth of business. Correct? Is that what you said this past year, or how much was it?
Or no, we're right now we are closing in on what looks like it's gonna be about 5 million for 26.
For 20
Um,
years. So
this year
how do you
probably about
grow a
3 million.
business like long term sustaining? How do you, because I take it that most of that money is not reoccurring, right? It's big installations and stuff. How is it that you're able to consistently do that year over year? In fact, and find growth. Is there a strategy to finding these facilities, or to knowing where your bird pressures are going to be at, like who you need to target? This kind, because not everybody's going to be a, I mean, I guess some residential customers might get into bird control, but to what you're talking about is, incredibly to another scale.
We 30 years, we're working with all the major contractors in the country. Clark, Whiting Turner, you name the contractor, we've worked with them.
Wow.
From everything from, heavy highway, we do a lot of bridge work. So we work with the heavy highway guys. I mean, every swallow season, there's at least one bridge they forget to put the bird work in, and we get an emergency call going, "Hey, we got a bridge over here that we need to get netting in ASAP because swallow season's closing in." So it's a lot of it is just years and years of relationships and people knowing who to call. We also there isn't a published project in Blueprint for anything public that does not cross our desk.
Okay.
If it's got bird work in it, we see it.
Yep.
We have a whole estimating department with multiple estimators all day long. All they're doing is doing takeoffs with blueprints. The difference
Wild.
between us now and us a year ago, I didn't have a professional sales team a year ago, and that's what Josh brought to the table from BirdX, and that's what I knew
Okay.
we needed. We would basically put out, tens of millions of dollars of bids every year and just kind of take what's stuck on the wall,
Okay.
along with the relationship contracts that would come. Now with a professional sales team where we've got a very regimented process of follow-up and follow
Right.
through, now we're seeing the numbers go up to where, we can foresee, in 5, 10 years, 15, 20 million a year in
Wow.
revenue. So
Holy cow.
the work is there. We know it's there. We know the type of numbers that, if you take all the companies,
Right.
combined doing the larger projects, we have an idea what the market is.
Right. Right.
So,
Holy
um,
cow. That I didn't realize. Okay, so what would you say the total market size is for birds?
well, I would say
Like nationwide?
I don't have the numbers right in front of me,
Yeah, yeah. Ballpark
but
it to your gut.
I would ballpark it between 40 and 50 million a year for
40 and 50 million.
just the big stuff that we know that the guys are doing, not counting all the little tiny jobs.
Right, right.
So
Easily
that
another 10 million, and all kinds of random things. I mean, people could find hotels and stuff in their local area. I mean, right, right.
so,
Okay. Wow, that is a huge segment. I don't think I had even a radical concept of how large the bird market itself was. Um, that's so how many companies do you think nationwide are actually doing that line of work?
our biggest competitor right now, I would say, is probably a Rentokil. They bought JC Ehrlich. JC Ehrlich had one of the biggest bird divisions in the nation, and we would bump up against them on a regular basis, especially the government work on the East Coast. Um, there's half a dozen uh, good sized companies that we compete with nationally.
Okay.
Uh, and then, of course, we're always competing with local companies. But on a national level, there's a half dozen companies that we compete with. Like we don't really compete with companies like Orkin.
Yep.
Orkin, they will do the bird work for their commercial clients, but they're not necessarily out there going after the construction projects. And,
Doing the new
that
bids and stuff.
Yep. We have other companies like Bird Masters out there that's been doing it for quite a while, especially the government work. They're out of Boston. Uh, you know, um, there's about a half dozen of us,
So does the
and
harvest feel bigger than the workers, or is there a squeeze there?
there's plenty of work for everybody.
Wow. Yeah.
Our attitude is there's more than enough work to keep everybody happy.
Isn't that the beautiful thing about pest control in general? There's just such a need for it everywhere. How many workers do you think actually are in the field, boots on the ground, or at least at your company? How many people are at your company? I guess you probably can't speculate about all the
Uh,
national stuff.
right now, I guess our bird division, we've got about 12 people total. That's
12.
another nice part about it is the numbers are larger, but we're not maintaining necessarily as large of a workforce. We're we're kind of in a space right now where we want to see how big do we want to get as far as maintaining our own workforce versus how much do we want to subcontract out,
Right.
and kind of find a balance in there, of having partners that we can work with and try and stay a little bit leaner as a company.
So who would you say is operating the largest bird division? I mean, of your competitors, you probably can estimate their employee size, huh?
I would say right now, I couldn't tell you their employee size, but right now, Rentokil's probably got the largest. They've got the largest footprint. Um,
Yeah, a bunch of
they,
franchises of
they
all kinds.
they acquired a couple of good companies that had good bird divisions. The first one
Okay.
being J.C. Ehrlich.
Right.
On the West Coast, they acquired Western Exterminators. They had some good bird people in there, and the combination of the two gave them a good national footprint.
Okay.
So
I guess I'm
I
just
would
trying
put,
to figure out in my head around how many like total people actually are out there doing this kind of work. Are we talking under 1,000?
oh, absolutely.
Oh wow, yeah,
Absolutely.
under 100.
I'd say under 200.
Wow, wow. Okay, so the reason why that's valuable for anybody who's listening is because I think there's 1,500 ACE certifications out there. And ACE certifications are pretty, they're very highly regarded. That's nice. I mean, for being a technician, if you're boots on the ground and you understand, a lot of our members in LTK would definitely like have a high regard for them. And then of course BCEs are the academic, higher end version of it. But if you do bird work and you do it competently, and you can put that on your resume, that puts you in a 1 in 200 pool of highly qualified, highly niche workers. That's incredible. That it has tremendous resume value, right? I mean, if you that definitely allows you. I mean, there's not a bunch of companies, so you can't be just going around burning bridges everywhere. But if you can get some experience and good coaching and good mentoring from a bird professional and have that on your resume, that is incredibly valuable to any company that's probably doing, like you said, enough to spare a few employees when a big job comes up. They probably have to have 15 plus, 20 plus employees, but
Well,
still, that's
the biggest commodity, is actually finding competent workers.
right. Yeah,
Especially because again, we need workers that are construction.
based,
They think like contractors, you
right.
know. Um, and then the other difficult part of this job is it's not local. If
Yeah,
you are going to do this
traveling.
work, I've had years where my guys have spent 9 out of 12 months on the road, and if you have a family, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're making 65, $75 an hour. If you have a family, that's tough.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a lot of days away from home. But I got, I mean, there's a lot of jobs in the industry that can be like that. I think Chaz, my buddy, and he's a great rep over at Nisus, and he spends, God, probably the same, like you said, 9 months out of the year gone. So, but when the work calls for it. So, what is, okay, so
Spoke to
say,
Chaz yesterday.
did you?
Yeah.
Oh man, he's the best. He's in here all the time. He's such a cool guy. Man, get shout out to Chaz. Yeah, that's awesome.
Actually, listening to your podcast with him, I reached out to him because we do a lot of rodent work. We have rodent dogs, and he started talking that Nisus has got the insulation now. So
Yes,
I wanted to get some
insulation.
more information. So after the podcast, I reached out to him.
No, he is incredible. He's just such a good guy, and he's really knowledgeable, an incredible resource, and he feels like he knows everybody. He's like, I mean, when he tells me he hasn't worked at Nisus that long, and you wouldn't know it from his social media. I mean, I guess he's been doing the social media thing for a while, but he does. He knows everybody. It feels like so.
Yep.
Um, okay, so take me back for a second. Okay, you say there's an aspiring technician out there, someone who's boots on the ground. Maybe they're a couple years into spraying houses. They've realized, hey, pest control is the job for me. I don't know if I'm really interested in chasing, uh, you know, like a college career or whatever. I'm a blue collar worker, right? Um, what is that journey of getting into bird look like, and how fruitful can it be? I mean, are these? I mean, you said $65, $75 an hour. How much of these guys are making a year? And
That well, they should be making six figures if they're working consistently with us.
yeah,
Um, So we even have one gentleman up in the Seattle area. He's a seasonal dock worker.
Okay.
So he'll work 4 or 5 months out of the year doing his dock work because he's union. And then when that slows down, he calls us up and says, "Hey, I'm available for the next 3 4 months." Great, and we throw him out on jobs, and
Wow.
that we actually picked him up when we did the job at SeaTac. We a lot of that job was just brute muscle that we needed because we were pulling these huge nets over these cables.
Okay.
So we went to the apprenticeship program through the union, and we pulled a couple of guys where we just needed guys with brute muscle,
Yeah, yeah,
and
absolutely.
and, and he just stuck out as a phenomenal worker, and he's been with us for 5 6 years now, working seasonally.
Wow. Wow. See, okay, so that right there even speaks to the flexibility, just the need for that service is so rare. How many years has he been doing bird work to in general? Like how many years was it before you
Oh,
found him?
he started with us.
Oh, wow. So yeah, he is literally 5 years. That's it.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
He was in the laborers union as an apprentice, and as I said, a lot of these jobs require us to work with unions. Sometimes we are in jobs where we have to sign our guys up in a local union, even
Oh
though we're a
wow. Okay.
non-union trade, but they have a PLA agreement on the job, and we're required to sign up. In this job, we found that most of the time bringing union guys in, they'll tell us for, you know, 2 of your guys or 3 of your guys, you got to bring one union guy in. Well,
Okay.
that union guy's typically going to stand around twiddling his thumbs, but he's no use to us. But the PLA agreement, we're required to do it.
Right. He has to
In
be
this
there.
case, like I said, we needed just grunt labor people that could just, move and pull net. And our guys that were technically skilled, would have them get the net in place and then basically do what they needed to do with it. So it worked out beautiful. But, Taylor, just out of all the guys they sent out, he stuck out because not only was he Johnny on the spot, willing to work hard, willing to push, he was asking questions and wanting to learn as he was going. He didn't have to do that. He was a union laborer.
Yeah. Yeah.
This was just another job to him. But no, he enjoyed the work, and we asked him at the end of the job, "Hey, do you want to stick around and do some more work with us?" And he said, "Yeah."
Can you think of can you think of a question that he asked that you were like, this guy, he's inquisitive, like, you know what I mean? Like, was there a moment? Was there a specific question he asked that?
Yeah, I was in and out of that job from traveling from San Diego back and forth. I wasn't running it. I was, I'd pop in, spend a day or two there. It was my lead installer that was running the project that was letting me know, hey, this guy's really good here. He's asking me a lot of questions. He's wanting to
Okay.
learn, and just a lot of positive feedback. And like I said, a lot of times we'll get the union guys, and it's like, every break, you got to give them their breaks. And like I said, they most of the time they just really, we don't even let them work because they slow us down.
Yeah.
We'll be in the lifts, and we'll tell him, you know what, you guys stay on the ground and just watch. You see any trash fall down, pick it up. Yeah. That's it. But this job, it was just all brute labor pulling these nets. I mean, these nets, they weighed almost 1,000 pounds.
Holy cow.
So they were big nets that we brought in for overseas, special for this job, and
Right.
it was a lot of work, getting them over. But we did what a job that normally would have taken probably 7 months. We got it knocked out in 3.
Holy cow. So these things are definitely also, like you said, what is the longest job that you've done? These can be, what, like almost year-long projects in some cases, huh? When you said 7 months,
We
that's almost half a year. That's over half a year that you guys budgeted in
Well,
time.
we had to get it done in 3.
Okay.
That was the timeline. The contractor didn't believe
And
we
then how
could
it
do
always
it.
works.
We told them we could. This was actually the first time we'd done ponds. I have a
Okay.
friend in Canada that has done quite a few ponds, and I called him up and ran my idea by him, and he said, "Yeah, I think that'll work." See, normally if you'd have 50 by 100 nets, that means we would have to seam all those nets, 5,000 square foot nets. They'd have to be
Yeah,
seamed.
you use the rings or something to clamp them, or yeah, yeah.
That would have taken us 7 months by me buying nets that were, a couple acres apiece and stretching them over. I eliminated all of that,
Right.
and eliminated a lot of labor, by doing it that
Mm.
way. And just taking these nets, I mean, each net was pretty much designed for each individual pond, and then just taking them and stretching them over. And like I said, it was a concept. Nobody had ever done it like this before that I know of. I had an idea that it would work, and it did.
Wow. Wow. So you got to be a part of something innovative and first time. That's a totally new technique. Is that you said that was something they got from Europe? Tell me, you said mentioned at the beginning. Tell me a little bit about that. What was it that you were able to take from Europe? That you said they were doing it a little bit ahead of time before we brought it here to the States, and it was
Well,
wide open fields when you joined in the
uh,
'80s.
Europe has always been ahead of us.
Okay.
They were doing more netting before we were. The electrical track that we all install now. I mean, Europe had that, I believe, for a good 10 years before, we'd really developed anything substantial here.
Okay.
Everything we've done, pretty much started over there first.
Why do you think that
So,
is? Is that just because of regulation and laws, or are
I
their
just
bird
think they
pressures higher? I mean, what's going on over there?
I think they were just ahead of us. They've got, I mean, if you go anywhere in Europe, there's lots of pigeons, and they've got a lot of historical properties there.
Yeah.
I think they were just ahead of us.
Okay.
Maybe nobody ever saw the market here, really. I
Yeah.
mean, the market here really didn't start developing, I would say, until the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, because I started in 94.
Hmm.
There was only a couple of us doing it in 94, the large projects, and
With
there
less than
weren't
200, it sounds like, yeah, definitely that there was.
and there really weren't that many projects out there. Companies like Bird Barrier and Bird Be Gone, when they opened their doors, uh, they educated the industry, they educated, I think, the consumers, and they created a much bigger niche market than there was prior to them coming, developing and opening their doors.
Okay.
I started working with Bird Barrier um, first year they opened business. I mean, I remember going into their office, and it was a little tiny office, and watching them box coils up, in the front and shipping them out the door. Now they're one of the largest suppliers in the nation. So,
So,
and
what
they
does that evolution even look like going from, first handful of people into it to nowadays there's a whole, government contract board list with multiple companies that are competing with the bird divisions? I mean, it sounds like you've seen this thing through and through from beginning to where we're at now. What are some of the pitfalls that you've seen in the growth and or the change in industry, and what have been some of the like improvements that you've seen as time has gone by?
well, with the suppliers, Bird Be Gone and Bird Barrier,
Mm-hmm.
doing a lot to educate the consumer and help grow the market. Um, there was also a negative to that too. They were willing to train anybody with a ladder on the back of their truck how to do the work,
Yeah.
which was good business for them, obviously, because they're growing their customer base. But that also drove the pricing down as more and more people got into the work. We saw the pricing started becoming more and more cutthroat
Yeah.
uh, for the average work. Luckily, where we're at with the size jobs we're bidding and doing, we're more limited to the companies we're working with, and the companies we're working with know how to, or competing against. Most of them know how to bid these projects correctly. But, there's a lot of times I could walk out to a shopping center and look at a project and see a $20,000 project and find out that, somebody bid it for $5,000. And I know that there's, more than $5,000 worth of materials in the job. A perfect example I'll give you is years ago. I remember when Terminex bought Antimite.
Okay.
Uh, when Terminex bought Animite, they had just sold LA Metro a new construction project, and it was a big net project for a new station. And Terminex
A
didn't know what they
news
were doing.
station
Yeah, it was
for
a
their
new
okay for
station.
their tower
Yep,
satellites and stuff. Okay, yeah, yeah.
new train station.
Oh,
That's what it
train
was.
station. Oh, okay.
Yes,
I heard
and
news station. Apologies.
it was sold, if I'm recalling, for about $60,000. And so Terminex didn't know what they were doing. It was beyond anything they'd done before at that point. And they called me out and said, can you help us out here? We don't know what we're doing, but we just bought Animite and this contract came with them and they're ready to go." And I walked out there and it was easily a $250,000 job that somebody at Animite had sold for like 60,000.
Oh no. Oh.
So, they went out there and looked at it and said, "Well, 60,000 sounds good for this." Well, that's the type of stuff I've seen. They had no idea that there was prevailing wage on this job and what they were going to have to
Right.
pay the installers to do it. They
Oh
had no
no.
idea of anything, and I even showed them up with the bid. I said, you've got $50,000 worth of materials to install, and that's before we even get into all the lift equipment. So, I mean, luckily, Terminex is a company that is large enough that,
They could eat
you
it
know,
on the.
they can eat it and not be happy with it, but
Oh my
somebody
goodness.
smaller, that could
Gotta
be a
taking
business
you
changer.
out. Right. Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I believe Animite was I think about a $55 million a year company when they sold, but that job would have been painful for them to do.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my God. Losing 200, $300,000 on that. Sounds like. Man, okay. So, at what point in the timeline do you start to see a lot of government contracts? Is this you're talking like new build construction, like casinos and stuff, or is it all almost done post afterwards? Are you guys installing everything after a problem has arisen and you're going out and doing these structures, or are you doing a lot of new build stuff?
It's a mix of everything.
Okay.
We do a lot of new build, and that's how a lot of times we're able to see where we're going to be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. A lot of the contracts that we sign today,
Hmm.
we're not going to be doing the work for 2 more years.
Right.
We are typically one of the last trades that's going to be out
To
there,
touch it.
because
Yeah.
our work is going to bury everybody else. If we got a new hangar that we signed today, chances are it's going to be 2 years before we're out there working.
Okay.
So we do a lot of new hangar. A lot of times we're doing a renovation. A lot of times there might be a hangar that's already got netting up and they're putting in, a new sprinkler system or new fans or new HVAC, and they're tearing all the netting out,
And I'm
and
gonna put it back up again.
we get to go put it back up again.
Right.
Uh, we get called in on, we're one of the few companies that's, we could say we're certified for historical projects. We can
Wow.
go out and we've done work with, Washington DC on historical projects. So, and that's a nice little niche to have, that not a lot of companies can say they can do. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay, so kind of going back to the timeline, where do you start to see a lot of these contracts start popping up? If the industry finally kind of was birthed in the late '80s, early '90s, you have a handful of people introducing the idea. At what point does it become a regular thing in construction where this is just, the government just adopts all this?
What in the 2000s, that's when I really started taking off nationally, early 2000s,
Okay.
and that's when a lot of the government work really started taking off for me.
What do you think
And
caused that? What was the change? Was there a cultural
um,
change?
no, I started getting brought in on some government work, and the contractors like working with me, and they educated me on federal contracts. They told me, okay, you're legally a minority. Go get your MBE. Go get your small business certification.
Okay.
Go get yourself a GSA contract. They basically taught me all the certifications and everything I needed to do to start being attractive to the government, and then also where to start finding all the government work. And
Can
back
you?
in that time frame, there was a period where I was out of pest control and just doing pure bird. And when 2008 hit, I had corporate contracts too, where I would do 300,000 a year with corporate contracts, large box stores and stuff like that. Well, 2008, all of that dried up. They were not spending any money in the private sector, and that's right when a lot of my government work took off. And if without the government work, 2008 would have been really bad.
So I had a buddy that worked for the DoD. He did vector control over in the Middle East for several years. He oversaw quite a few guys, and um, can you give me a little insider ball for people who are interested in like what? There's this whole other half of pest control. You have civilian work, and now you're saying there's this government work. How do you find this work, and who do you got to get connected into? You're saying certification, but say you're just a 18, 21-year-old guy who's maybe 1 year in, 3 years in, and is hearing about this for the first time. Where do you go?
Oh, there's online resources basically where you can find the bids. You can register and you just got to search them out and find them.
Okay.
Um, I can't remember the name because they keep changing them every couple of years. It used to be FBO, Fed Biz Ops, and I know it's under a different name now that
Okay.
I can't remember, but easy to find if they wanted to do a search.
Okay.
But there are government sites where you put in there and you put pest control, and you'll see all the bids come up. You'll see all the VAs come up. You'll see for pest control. You'll see the military bases put their pest control bids out. There's good money in government work. One of my biggest pest control contracts was the West LA VA. We were getting $750,000 a year for 4 technicians full time.
Heck yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, that
Oh,
was a nice contract.
yeah. Yes, it is.
So and that was pure pest.
Okay, so you can find a good mixed bag of contract work out there for rodent, pet, just general pest. Who's are there any entities that are hiring a larger volume of these kind of like um, vector control and kind of like does the DoD? I mean, where are you getting these like like I know you said the VA, but this is all like small subcontract out stuff. Like you have to have your own little company to work it, or
Well, with the VA, the VA's changed. When I got the VA, I got that under an emergency contract. The company that had it at that contract at the time was had basically been kicked out. They were a large national. I won't mention their name, but they had a forward fly problem, and forward flies were getting into the surgical rooms, and they had to cancel like 90 surgeries over 3 months.
oh Lord,
So we went in there, and that was actually a fun pest control job because we had to do some true detective work on that one.
yeah, yeah.
And we solved their forward fly problem, with some real good detective work. It was the cisterns when you get I can't think of the name right now, but basically when you get dialysis.
Okay,
They
yes.
they basically they had a the people would
For,
go in there for dialysis, and they had these giant, huge cisterns where basically all the organic material would go to, and they weren't sealing properly, and the forward flies were breeding in the seals. And these were clear on the other side of the hospital from the surgical rooms, but then they were getting up somehow. They were getting up into the false ceiling and going clear across the false ceiling, following the lights, and then from there entering into the surgical room. And
get
the
out of
the
here.
answer to that was they had to spend 7 figures in construction work, removing all those cisterns and redoing that whole system.
How'd
So
you convince him that it was that, even though it was so far away and everything? I mean, what? How were you able to?
we figured it out. We wrote a complete report, gave it to them, and they basically asked us to bring an entomologist out and back that up.
Confirm
When we
that.
brought an entomologist out, He spent a whole day out there and basically said, "Yeah, you guys nailed it right on the money." Wrote the report, and with his stamp on it, they did what needed to be done.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
it was one of those times in your life of pest control where you get to wear a badge. You did some real homework and some real
Oh yeah.
detective work, and
Oh yeah.
solved a real problem.
That's awesome. That's an incredible story. We are getting about 7 minutes from our 1 hour mark on our, and that was a great gold story, kind of just to round off the ending of this thing. Man, plug your business. Tell me, where can people find you? Where can people get involved if they're interested in getting into bird work and getting consulted with you guys?
I said Bird Solutions International. It's been
Bird
around since
Solutions.
1994, but now
Okay.
we're based out of Harrison, Tennessee. As I said earlier, we're always looking for companies to work with to, on any level from, training, to partnering because, our long-term vision basically is to be like the Copacabana bird control.
Love that.
Uh, we see a vision for that, and we've been doing it long enough. We have the experience. What's nice is Josh, my partner. He brought Bird X. For anybody that knows bird control, the first time I met Josh, uh, he was trying to sell me on Bird X. Bird X basically was a flyer company that sold bird products to janitors, and he flew all the way up from Chicago to meet me. And even though I told him he was wasting his time, and basically my exact words were, "Do you realize you're repping the Kmart of bird control supplies?"
Oh.
But I watched him take that company as the sales manager and
Mhm.
turn it into one of the top three in the nation. And I saw what he did, and that's why. And him and I became good friends. And Miguel is my partner at Innovative Pest Solutions. I brought
Okay.
Josh in as a partner over at Bird Solutions because I believe I took Bird Solutions as far as I can take it. I needed somebody that had a skill set that I didn't have, and that was to build a sales team
Okay.
and bring more to the table. And after watching what he did with BirdX, I knew he would be the right partner for that.
You had it.
And he's been on board for since May, and since that time, exactly what I predicted would happen has happened. I told him, I said, I guarantee you'll take our sales from where they are to 5 million the first year. And he didn't believe me, but I said, you're gonna owe me a ribeye, and he owes me the ribeye because
Josh,
we're gonna.
okay, you still waiting for that dinner, huh?
We've averaged 2 to 3 million a year for probably 15 years in
Wow.
bird work.
Still
Three
impressive.
million was always our ceiling to where we started burning our guys out,
Okay.
and that's why I knew we needed a new model because the guys just can't stay on the road nonstop.
Fair enough, yeah.
They've got families. So together, that's what Josh and I are working on. We're putting together a new model.
Love
We're
that.
trying to bring it to the industry, and we're trying to find partners out there to work with that can keep up the quality that we would install ourselves.
Well, I
So
know we've had most of this conversation has been about bird work, but in reality, we were supposed to have a very deep conversation about rodents and canine and some other access. So people who've gotten this far into the podcast, a little, sweet treat for you is that we will have another podcast here on the horizon where we'll do that talk. But tell me a little bit about that as well. Where can people find you on the rodent thing? What program are you bringing here about that? Just kind of give me an elevator pitch on what is it you're
the,
doing
the
there.
way the way I always describe that is doing bird work taught me to find a niche within an industry and become great at it.
Yes, love that.
Um, and when bed bugs started becoming a problem, I saw another niche market,
Okay,
and
got
and
me on the
I
hook.
I, I put together a hybrid program that had a warranty that well surpassed everybody else out in the industry, and we became known as the company to solve your bed bug problems in Southern California.
Okay.
And that's really what blew our pest control up. We didn't have any multifamily hardly at all when we started, and through bedbug now multifamily is 70% of our revenue.
Holy cow.
I immediately started with the dogs. I knew dogs were the way to go.
Yep.
So we were one of the first companies in California to jump on the canine bandwagon. I've been doing heat since the 90s. I was an original licensee when it was a license process and you had to get a license from the patent holders. And I knew that was going to be the way to go. And, once again, it's a niche within the industry. And we were lucky enough to have Robert Gregorio join our team. Robert Gregorio is probably one of the best canine handlers in the nation. If you talk to anybody out there that knows the industry, he introduced me to Belgians. We were doing Beagles before that, and Belgians are just a fun dog to work with. There's nothing wrong with Beagles. They're great dogs. They have their place, but I find Belgians will run circles around Beagles most of the time. Beagles, when you out there working them, they're food driven, and that's how you train them. It's food reward. Belgians are out there because they're having fun.
Yeah.
They enjoy. They're toy driven. So,
Right.
and we can get a lot more done with Belgians, and we've got some Goldens too now. So, and they're also toy driven. We can just get a lot more done a lot faster.
Yeah.
And the areas where we need something a little slower, we bring the big beagles in. We have them too. So. Now we've got termite dog, we've got rodent dogs.
That's awesome.
I didn't really know if I saw a market for the rodent dogs, and now I very clearly see a market for the rodent dogs.
Yep. Yeah. Huge.
They're doing phenomenal work out there with the rodent dogs,
Yep.
and the bed bug canines they just keep rolling. We're getting busier and busier. We're back up to pre-COVID numbers.
Yep.
That's our only department that got hurt during COVID was our canine and our bed bug. Nobody was going anywhere, so bed bug.
Right. Travel. Yeah. Totally.
So, but yeah, so yeah, we're looking forward to having a much larger in depth talk, about the canines and
Definitely.
and
But I'm
the
very
special.
glad we had to talk about the bird control from a personal side. I don't have any pre-knowledge of bird control or what that world looks like, and I felt like I'm so privileged, so blessed to get a chance to see insight from someone who's seen from the beginning to the end, where we're not in, but like the beginning to where we're at now, all the growth and just and work on such scales of projects. I really do feel incredibly privileged to have a conversation about that almost instead. So thank you for just pouring that out tonight and, giving your background in that way. I know it was a curve. We kind of prepared for a lot of rodent stuff in commercial facility, but on the commercial side, bird work is such an underappreciated, underlooked at service that definitely needs to be addressed heavier. So,
We do a lot of work out in Texas. We'll have to get you out to one of our job sites at some point. Come out and spend a day with us.
I would absolutely, absolutely love that. Please stay in contact with me. Guys, we hit the 1 hour mark. Thank you so much for joining in tonight for the License to Kill show. Jeff, thank you so much for taking your time this evening. Get back with me with Miguel. We will definitely get a little better audio source with him, and I would love to have that conversation about the dogs. So, guys, keep your ear to the ground for the next announcement on the pod, and we'll catch you later.
Thanks for tuning into the License to Kill podcast. We hope you found today's episode helpful, informative, and engaging. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe to your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. It really helps us to reach more listeners like you. Have a question or a topic that you'd like us to cover in a future episode? Connect with us through our Facebook, YouTube, and most importantly, our Discord. Until next time, this is your host, Marcus, reminding you to stay sharp, stay legendary, stay connected.